Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 67 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Okay, last video we wrapped up with getting this panel roughed down into shape, this level. Now, obviously the easy way when you're doing this production, you've got the resources. I don't have a gantry saw here. If we had the ability, it's very easy to either take a gantry saw or a contour saw and cut a straight cut down all the way around. The problem you run into with doing that is it's really easy to have a little bit of shift in one or two corners because this is still tapered out just a little bit compared to being perfectly parallel to this face and this face. They should be parallel. But to run a cut around, to run a cut on one side and then turn the stone and run another cut and have the stone perfectly aligned to have all the cuts meet is a lot more challenging on a big saw than it is to do it by hand. Doing it by hand takes more labor, but you're more accurate. So, and what I want to do with this project, I can't find my pencil. We want to do a scotia. See if I can turn the camera just a little bit. We'll have a scotia like this that runs up, roughly in about 2 inches, and we'll do a pretty steep scotia because we want to push this job up and make it look tall. But if we come right down to the broken rock or the rock pitch, having that scotia start right there, it looks good, but it doesn't look as impressive. What looks better is to have like a 1/2 inch flat. And so what we're going to do, and then from that 1/2 inch flat, then you run your curve up. And this obviously has got to be justified with the other side. But we'll have this because this is going to be broken off because I'm going to come in here. I'm just doing this for example. But to have a band around here, rusticated or band or whatever you want to call it, to have that flat area as a transition between this curve and this rough stone will help accentuate each one of them. It just makes them pop a little bit better. It looks a little more professional. So as I'm producing, I said we've got to produce this line right down here along this edge where this meets where the rough stone. We're going to pitch this off and break that off, and then we'll chip this edge in to make it really pretty. We want to have a nice flat border all the way down here, and so that's what we're going to focus on producing. If we put a plumb block on here, it's going to be about twice the width that we need, and then we can work on tuning this up so that this is exactly by our tri-square, so that this is exactly deep enough, because right now it still's got to go just a tiny bit. That's almost exactly right there. So we got to take a little bit more off right in here. We'll make this pad right for the plumb block, going square from this line, and we'll go down and we'll probably put a plumb block about in the center just to start. Then we can put our straight edge on, cut to depth, and put at least one more plumb block in right away, so we've got a really good register, a really good support. And then we'll transfer that. Once we get that lined up where those are perfect, we'll transfer from this one and this one. We'll slide the straight edge down and we'll cut another plumb block, and then we'll do another one on the end, and we'll get this panel very straight. We're going to just do a skinny panel this whole length. We'll waste part of that panel off. The lower part of it, we'll save it, and then we'll break the stone down from there. But having that little step will make this look more sophisticated. It'll also do a little bit to make this a little more of a dramatic curve because it'll shorten it instead of making it longer. We'll take a 1/2 inch off and sort of give us a little deeper scotia. So hang around. This is just tedious work, but this is what makes jobs look great. But we could take in a big facility, if we had the right tool. We had a saw at my sculptor's studio where I apprenticed that had cut this much, but it took a tremendous amount of adjustment to make sure that you were perfectly vertical, that there was no skew like this, and that all these sides align. That when you start doing some big saw work, that's what's really hard, is to get all those things aligned, because this isn't a little piece of something that weighs 30 pounds. It's easy to manipulate. We're working with something that weighs a couple of tons here, and to get it minutely, perfectly aligned is very challenging. So let's cut some stone. Okay, this is pretty good right here. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, because when we get done, you know, one thing I hadn't mentioned yet, I've been drawing on this edge here. We still got to cut this side in about 2 inches, just like we'll do on the other end, to put our line. So this will be where we end up, and then we'll have our corner will be way in here. We're going to start this off. We're going to get this one. Get one plumb block in there and get it to where it sets nice and flat. Practice here. Get this. Do one probably in the middle, one right in the very center of the stone, and then we've got enough to leapfrog down. But we'll cut this one and we'll cut this one. And we'll probably cut the other end first to get those, so we've got our alignment. And we may cut this one next, and then this one in the middle, so we can skip it down. Try to keep this nice and flat. So you just have to go slow. But we'll produce this band. You know, we'll produce a line down here, basically the width of the plumb block, so we can check it anywhere as we want to go. And we'll get that nice and flat. And that's only doing a panel that's, you know, just over an inch wide. And that'll give us a really nice surface to work from. And then we'll be able to mark where we want our scotia to begin and leave our 1/2 inch, 5/8, whatever, down there at the bottom to help accentuate it and do the transition from the curve to the broken stone, so that we've got a nice face, and that will help. One of the things this will help do is that we can have a perfectly straight edge right here on top of this flat portion, this step. And by having that flat on top, if this bottom edge wanders a little bit because of the rock, it may not be as obvious. We should be able to fix it and pick it off, but we'll have this that'll catch their eye as a nice square transition from this to here, and then another good turn to there. Keep cutting stone. Okay, this is the benefit of plumb blocks. And this is why I showed you with squaring that block of stone, how to do it with plumb blocks. Now I understand you can flatten a stone face with other methods, whether you use a hand point or doing whatever. Marking on the sides and cutting it in and doing it with a chisel or a point or claws or combination or lapping it or whatever. This type of work very often involves producing what is in effect a flat surface or a panel that's embedded or captured in other material, and you won't always have a perfectly flat surface for reference. So for this side to produce this band that I'm talking about that we're going to leave, I went down here where I'd already marked it in square with my tri-square. I had this one almost completed, so I went ahead and finished this spot right here. And now I can take and put my plumb block here, and I've got my plumb block on the other end, and take my long straight edge, and now it's very easy, because basically what I'm going to do, those are where they need to be. I've got to produce a panel right there. All of this has to come out, and this has to be flat and true. And you can't, I'm not going to say you can't do it with just a hand point, guessing and hitting on it, or a chisel. You can do it with the other methods. But now I have to do is cut this, measure it with a ruler, measure it in with my straight edge to make sure my depth is right. And I just have to cut it till a plumb block fits. And I've got a perfect panel. That's why I use plumb blocks. Okay, so now we'll go through, we'll mark this up. I'll still have to use my square set to make sure that my depth is correct. I'll have to clean that wall off a little bit, maybe go up. Over here I had to clean off almost probably it's 3/16, not quite a 1/4 inch, because I stayed inside. When you saw, it's better to stay on the there's a safe side and a dangerous side. You're better to stay on the safe side of the line, because what will happen is when you cut down, you may tip your saw, and if you cut it a diagonal, you could go too deep. I tried to make sure when I cut that I had my saw either plumb or racked or tipped a little bit towards me so that this runs out, and then I can get it perfect. Even if this line is right, the bottom's kicked out a little bit, it's not a problem. Now I can cut it back with my tools, but now I can put plumb blocks all along here, and as long as my plumb block fits, I'm just going to make my band the width of this plumb block in part, because that's as wide as my chisel. It's a perfect fit. So as long as I've got a perfectly flat plane that's all axed down there, I'll be golden. And then we'll hope this stone breaks right. Time to keep cutting. First thing I'll do on this next spot, I'll cut this depth. I got to trim this wall down. Here I've only got to go just a tiny bit, because if I go up high, it fits. Down here it pushes it out, so I've only got to do just a little bit. I'll get that cleaned up, and then I'll do my bottom to depth. Should be right on the money. See that? They're all perfectly tight. Now all I have to do is just keep skipping and repeat this. And what I'll probably do is I'll split these differences, you know, split them in half and split them in half and split them in half, and then I can connect them, and I'll axe the whole panel. This is really good, because now I can take this, go down here, and just skip it down, cut that end, and the far end, and it'll all be nice and straight. Then I've got my reference points. I just need to, as far as depth goes, then I just need to make sure that they're deep enough into the stone, because some of these are right on the money already. I don't have to go any deeper. And I'll have this gorgeous panel right along the front here, right along this band, and then we'll break it and see how it goes. Back to work. That's why I use plumb blocks. Good stuff. hard to see whether you can see that or not. This is natural light coming in from the outside. This is why I don't like to depend on natural light, because it wipes it out. If I get over here to work, I'm blocking all my light. Romance is fine and dandy, but when you got to get some work done, you got to work. Put pads in so everything sets nice and even. And then I just will work this down. The harder part, I'll level this off, we'll axe all this at the end, we'll put a raking light on it in order to get rid of all these pads, make it look nice and flat. We'll measure to get it really close. But I got to go down and see here where there's a step that's right at a 1/4 inch there that I got to true up for this lower part. Then up here on the other end it's really close, so I don't have as much to remove. I tried to saw differently on the top, on the big part, because the big part will help hold you in place. These little ones, if you saw right on that edge, you get off a little bit, there's no way to correct it. So I'd rather cut this part by hand. We've got these really tight, they fit really well. Just keep working this and I'll do another one and another one and another one. Just go right down. Wrapping up the last one right here. See that? They're all good. Got just a tiny scrape right there I'll do. Something I need to mention. I've been using this chisel that I turned into a ripper. It's just a regular 5/8 chisel. I left it square and cut teeth on it so I could rip it or cut a channel with it. And I've been doing that to open this up just like you'd use a saw. That's what a ripper is for, is to open stone up so you can break it out. It'll relieve it so it'll break more easily or more predictably. You'll have better control. What I'm really careful to do on this when I'm doing this is at the beginning, when I got a lot of stone, I can go back and forth and put a line in or a channel across this band. What I have to make sure I don't do is use this down near the end, because one of the worst things you can do is put a real distinctive line across a flat surface, because it's really hard to camouflage it, and the only way to get around camouflage it is to push that entire surface down enough to clear it up and keep it true. It's easy to go this way, but when I start getting close, I don't use this to open that up. I don't like to go across this face any more than I have to. Now what I'll do is I'll go right down these last two, right down this red line, and I'll dress those and get them kind of close. We'll axe it all up. And once you get everything put together, this is what you'll have. We've got a nice, almost flat panel here. Got a little bit, little humps because it's proud between them. So I've still got to axe this down. But I got to finish this edge in here, this interior, this important money line right here, where it transitions from smooth to pitch. So I've got to make sure that these connect, and these look really well. So I'll do those, and then I'll get that face worked out, and after we get this line really nice, axe it all down, and it'll be perfect. Got to come in here on the end quite a bit, because this is where we figured our line was. This is 6'2", we're figuring this is 6'1", so we cut into here, and then cut down to break that in. We're still going to come in a couple inches, but we cut down into this area. We got this to break with, and if we pitch from down here to pitch that corner, it'll lift that off. It'll be great. So we should clear that all up. It should look really good, and this will break in hard. We'll break that too, and that should clear off the other part, and they'll probably meet right in there somewhere. So, but that's what you'll get. I guess you could do that with other tools. If you had a big saw, we did this during manufacture, you'd run a vertical cut one way, you want to cut here, you run a cut here, and just cut that whole notch off. It'd save a lot of time. But getting them lined up, there's companies that don't want to fool with lining stuff up that close, because it's real easy to get 2 of them or 3 of them to match. But then you'll have run out by, a quarter inch or something on one corner, and you still have to have somebody go in and fix it that knows what they're doing, can do it by hand. And most people just don't do this anymore. So it's looking good. Putting this video together, I want to point out a couple of things that I see in the video, and I hope that y'all have seen and noticed. Earlier on in the video, when I saw a bunch of cuts in to knock this down, or maybe it was in the previous video, I forget. Maybe it's in the previous video. When I start cutting and pushing through all those cuts, where there's all the lines, and I'm pushing through those cuts, you'll hear it. It'll push, and then you'll hear the stone sort of start quack. It'll start to make a bunch of noise. It's because it's cracking. Just like I told you. That's why I pointed out in that video a while back about hearing a crack in the stone. Sometimes you want that crack to just go, and you've got enough meat there, you don't have to worry about it. You can keep pushing. When I did all those, I saw it in, and I was up high. That's why I had to push all of this down, roughly a quarter inch, because I stayed up in case something broke and dug. But sometimes that'll start to make that noise. You don't want it, so you got to stop, so that crack doesn't get any bigger than it has to, because a lot of times you can stop pushing, and a crack will just abruptly stop when you actually work it out. You can go to the end of that crack and work it out, and it'll secure your stone a lot better. The other thing, I'm not doing this. I'm not double fisting it. I'm not squeezing this thing to death. All these videos, all these people showing you how to use hand machines, telling you what it's like to use a hand machine, carving with hand machines that don't know what they're doing, are squeezing them. Now I can squeeze these pretty hard. It's not going to do me any good. You watch most of this, carving like this. That's not squeezing the hand machine. That's not squeezing it hard. That's letting the machine do the work. Sometimes I'll have a fist around it, but that's only to control it. Even some of these last ones where I was working here, I had to go to where I was doing the 9-point, the rough out work, and I wasn't even squeezing it. I was just holding it down, trying to have enough room to work. You don't have to squeeze these tools. These tools will hurt you. They will wreck your hands. You will get white fingers or white hands. We call it white hands because your hands get all white and they burn like crazy when it's cold, and capillary damage or nerve damage. They blood vessels will break like crazy. It hurts. And the stuff about getting gangrene, okay, dude, I know a lot of people that have done this for a living, like dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, and ain't none of them lost any fingers to gangrene. So if you are scared that's going to happen to you, you're probably going to get eaten by a grizzly bear before you're going to lose a finger to gangrene from using one of these things. Okay? Don't squeeze the tools. You don't have to. if you watch I don't know if I've captured it or not, but when I'm doing this rough out work, when I'm working hard and I want to push, I'm even apt to lean into it with my shoulder, depending on how close I am to the stone, and pushing it with my shoulder. That's why I don't like the quick releases on the end, because they're long and they end up snapping off. And if one of them snaps off, it's not a big deal. If it snaps off right here, and then you got to go find an easy out, twist it out of your tool, it's really a pain in the butt. So I don't use those quick releases. I don't care who says they're great. We've never used them. Never, ever, never. That's one thing we never had in the studio when I apprenticed, and I don't use them and just don't. But don't squeeze these tools. All you have to do is control it. Squeezing it is not going to make anything carve better. Okay? Back to work. As you're axing this, it's really critical, and this is just in general. You can't dig yourself out of the hole. Okay, when you've got a low spot, when you're axing something, you can't touch it. You have to touch everything around it to lift that low spot up. And what happens when you've got a spot like this one here or this one here where there's a little step and you're axing it, you'll end up carrying and you'll dig into it. You go past this edge. See this edge right here? I haven't got there yet. But when I work this, I'll have to cut this and axe this and axe this. Work this edge back to get this line to develop the line I've already got here. But I can't do any overrun. I can't go past that and into the hole, because you'll end up dishing that hole out and you have to push the whole thing back further. So even if you have to take some red pencil and scribble on a low spot so you don't touch it, do it. Don't touch the low spots. Leave them alone. Work beside them, and you'll be afraid of them. You'll see they're awful, and your natural instinct will end up be, I'm just going to hit that and scrape that, smooth it up. Okay, well now you just made the whole thing deeper. You got even more work to do. So work everything else down around it to it. And if you got something that looks like it's a really low spot, just kind of stay off of it for right now. And you may find out that once you push everything else around, I mentioned before in other videos, visual noise. You'll see this, it'll look awful, but it may not be as bad because this may be so high it looks deceiving. It makes this look extra low. Get rid of the other stuff around it and you'll be able to evaluate it better. And it may be an issue, even if it is a low spot, every panel's got some little low spot in it that you wish you could clean out. And if you try to scrape everything to absolute perfection, yeah, you can do it, but you end up losing stone. You got to get everything balanced out so everything looks good in conjunction with everything else. But don't, when you're axing this, don't go and accidentally go down into your low spot, and then you'll dig your low spot out and wreck it. Stay out of your low spots. Those are your reference points. Get everything else down to them. And then at the end, if you have to clean something up special, do it. But you may find out that that low spot isn't anywhere near as bad as you think it is. So stay off it. Now all I'm doing is going from my spots with the plumb blocks, measuring down with my ruler, truing it up. Go from one spot, because all these are at the same level, because if I put these plumb blocks in anywhere, put a straight edge on them, they're all tight, it grabs them all, it's all the same level. So like right here, I got to take some out here, but this is pretty good. Just go down, I'm already more than halfway done. Make a nice panel. All with plumb blocks. In this awful light. Down here at the end, where I've got closer to 1/4 inch to remove, I'm using the saw to take this off, because having a really nice face here for the handset or the chipper is really critical. And I can carve it, but if I use a chisel, I'm imparting all that little bit of stress, and I'm creating an uneven surface. If I've got a smooth surface to start with, that first really good hit will take and really work. If I've got a crushed stone to get there, I lose control. It makes it all mushy and muddy. It makes a bad break. So down here, I'm sawing this down to get the majority of this off with the saw to give me a better break when I start pitching. But I'm almost done. We got this wrapped up. Did this panel, got it axed, got it pretty good. Don't have to get it absolutely perfect everywhere because we're going to cut about half of this off. We just need this bottom edge to be pretty good. And then the rest of this, we'll adjust it as we need to when we axe it down when we start tipping this, because what we'll do when we cut this scotia in here, after we break that, is we'll bevel that edge to create that edge. We won't cut it, we'll just bevel, put a line in there and bevel to it, and then if we need to true it up, we will, because we don't need to true up all this stone we're going to throw away. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of money. So, but this is what's easy to do with plumb blocks, and otherwise it'd be really tough to do it, especially by hand. So work on those basic skills. They'll really take you where you want to go. But now we got to start breaking this. You have to turn this stone and see how well it breaks. And hopefully everything will go well. My name is Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with a Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship, working on the base for a big angel. Thanks for coming in.